All right, I just started recording, but we'll start when Matt gets back. So we know. All the cool podcasts do this too. You know, they start the recording, we all just sit here and stare at the camera, and then we go, "Oh, what's up, everyone?" All right. What's up, everyone? Welcome to the post-game show podcast. My name is Grant. Welcome. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm here with all my friends. We're here about to talk about the NFL draft. So I'm just going to get started. You guys talk about the Colts. You have more opinions than I do. I can't really say much.
I tell you what, if I was 21, me and Chris Ballard would have a cold one tonight. For sure. Very proud of him in his moves tonight. Got some nice offensive weapons.
Absolutely.
I like it.
Yeah, I agree with you, Evan. I think their biggest need heading into the draft was a big-bodied receiver, and I think they accomplished that. Michael, you know, you look at Phillip Rivers, he's always had a big-bodied receiver ever since he came in the league. Vincent Jackson, Mike Williams, I mean, even Keenan Allen. He likes those big targets, so I think Pittman will be a great fit for the Colts. And then I love the trade-up for Jonathan Taylor. I think that obviously shows that they don't want to pay Marlon Mack long-term, but Taylor's one of the most accomplished backs in college football history, and I think he's going to be –
10 rushing titles?
Yes, I think he's going to be a great addition behind that offensive line. So I'm very happy with the Colts draft so far. I think they've nailed it.
Yeah, and I'm glad they didn't do any more defensive weapons because they did so much in free agency. So I think it was very, very smart of them to go offensive. And then the talks of them trying to get up for Love, or get I think Jalen Hurts was still on the board at that point. So it's nah, listen, we got Phillip, and we got Jacoby as a body fill in. But I mean, exactly. You signed Phillip Rivers, who's somewhat of an accomplished quarterback in the league. I think you're pretty strong in that regard for at least a year or so. Just let that ride out and get some more, offensive targets in case you need to get another quarterback in a draft or two from now.
Yeah.
That's already in place. So, yeah. Matt,
yeah, exactly. But yeah, you guys pretty much covered all of it. I loved everything about what the Colts did last night. We didn't have a first-round pick, but we got DeForest Buckner in free agency, and he's a stud. So
that's good enough for a first-round pick.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm actually in a group chat with these guys, and they were trying to tell me, which it could go either way, but they were saying the Colts should have drafted J.K. Dobbins, and I don't know if I agree with that. I personally like Jonathan Taylor better, and I think it was a better pick. But I mean, both running backs are really good. I just don't know who would be better because J.K. Dobbins actually just got picked by the Ravens, and that's going to be nice with Lamar, but I don't know. I like Taylor a lot better. I think he'll be better at the pro level. I mean, once you get rid of Mack, which you don't have to get rid of Mack, but once he has that number one spot, I could see him being like a top 10 running back. I'm being serious.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And honestly, if it comes to the point where we're heavy loaded at the running back and we need to get rid of Marlon, if the new guys pulling strong, then I think Marlon and his skill level alone could be an added benefit in the trade category.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And you have Naheem Hines, who we were actually at that game, Evan, where he had 3 punt return touchdowns or something like that. Yeah.
They have him, and they have that. I think it's Jonathan Wilkins.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Jordan Wilkins.
Yeah. Yeah. I like him.
So, the biggest story of the draft, I think, I told Matt this earlier. I said this is going to obviously be what everyone's talking about. What's everyone think of Jordan Love going to the Packers?
Someone else can go first.
I think when you talk about the biggest losers of the first round, I think the Packers have to come up in that category. I get the logic behind the pick, I see what they're trying to do. That they had success getting Aaron Rodgers when they had Brett Favre, drafting Aaron Rodgers in the first round. But the Packers were a team that were literally in the NFC Championship game last season. They're a couple playmakers away from going to the Super Bowl last year. So you're going to draft a guy who's going to sit on the bench instead of going and getting your franchise quarterback some playmakers or some defenders on the defensive side of the ball. It didn't make sense to me, especially with the talent that was still on the board. I didn't agree with the pick.
I agree.
It
What
was
do you guys think?
absolutely ridiculous. I was listening to Pat McAfee's podcast today, and they had Michael Lombardi, who used to be a GM for the Patriots and the Browns, and probably part of other organizations too. Like, he was trying to say, statistically, there's one statistic that says, Aaron Rodgers is not producing. He's actually on a decline. And it's like, okay, let's look at another statistic. Let's look at the total number of yards with drop catches that receivers have. I mean, he can't, he can't make any plays. He's throwing to a bunch of corn cobs out there.
Exactly.
There was a stretch. There was a stretch where his best receiver was Alan Lazard.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Guys like him and Geronimo Allison and
Marquez Valdez-Scantling.
Exactly.
And like the Packers, I don't think they've taken what offensive skill player like receiver wise and like 11 or something.
Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
Because you got to think their best receivers. Obviously, you got to think of Devontae Adams. I don't think he was drafted high. Then before that, you got Jordy Nelson, Greg Jennings. I mean,
all second round guys.
Yeah.
And you notice when those guys leave Green Bay, they just drop into an abyss. Jordy Nelson went to the Raiders, nothing. Greg Jennings, I don't even think he went to another team.
Oh.
Aaron Rodgers makes those receivers. He makes them relevant. And I think it's stupid to say that Aaron Rodgers is already on decline, considering he just led the team to the NFC Championship. That's my opinion.
Well, that's the thing. I think Aaron Rodgers has a lot of good football left in him. So for them to draft a quarterback in the first round, you're going to want to play him in his first couple of years, while he's on his rookie contract to see what you have in him. So to me, that's just putting a clock on Aaron Rodgers, and I think it's ultimately going to make him unhappy and cause a lot of tension in that locker room.
Yeah.
He's got 4 years left on his contract.
Yeah.
It's just crazy. It's and there's so many other positions besides a tight end. You're with Jimmy Graham. You're better off putting a robotic tackling dummy out there to catch balls and block. And he would statistically outrun Jimmy Graham.
Jimmy Graham and Jordan Reed are about the same when it comes to just getting knocked out every season, and basically, they're at the end of their careers. It's kind of obvious. The Packers signed a tight end this offseason, though, didn't they? Like a big one? I don't know if they did or not.
Not for sure.
But I don't know. I think the Rodgers should still be their top quarterback. That he's going to be, but that just creates problems. It creates problems in the locker room.
I think I just wonder what's going on. I wouldn't even know like the locker room. I feel like with Aaron Rodgers' personality that I feel like, this Love kid who didn't expect to be a first round per se pick. Yeah. I think he's more, I don't think he's got like the first, round mindset where he's going to like, I got to come in and get the job, I mean, he's going to be sitting under Aaron Rodgers. I feel like he's going to listen like Aaron did for Brett Favre. But like, I feel like it's going to be, cause a problem between the front office and the locker room.
Yeah.
If the front office is even in, Matt LaFleur, I've heard some things that him and Aaron don't get along well already as it is. So it's just like, is this going to hinder them, from making it to the conference championship?
And he didn't get along with McCarthy either when he was there. So, I mean, it could be a Rodgers problem, but at the same time, you can't deny his God-given talent as a quarterback. Because, he takes receivers that you've never heard of, and he makes them relevant. So that's the way I look at it.
Yeah.
So other than that, let's go to the start of the draft with the obvious picks of Burrow, Young, and those were probably the only two obvious picks. Okudah being 3 was kind of obvious. It could have been different. What's everyone think of just the two impacts of Burrow and Chase Young?
I don't know. I just feel like, with the first from pick like 1 to 4, even if they come into the draft hot or not, it's just kind of depend on how they come into camp. I feel like, like no doubt Joe Burrow is a stud, and he has his weaknesses, but I don't think I can really, judge him as, the greatest draft pick of this draft until he actually gets into a playing setting in camp, preseason, and then the season.
Yeah.
So, for sure. That's my take.
Yeah, I mean, I think both guys are going to step in day one and be immediate impacts on their relative teams. Burrow obviously is coming off, in my eyes, the greatest college football season of all time.
Agreed.
But, it's going to, I think it's going to be a challenge for Burrow because, I mean, just trying to overcome the dysfunction of the Cincinnati franchise. They're going to have to put weapons around them. I thought they did a good job in free agency, and I thought they've had a really good draft thus far, adding T. Higgins, in the second round. But, that's going to be key is keeping him upright and getting him weapons because, you look at the production increase from his junior year to his senior year, a lot of things had to come in place for him to succeed at that level, and I think it's going to be the same at the NFL stage. And then obviously Chase Young, I thought he was the best player in the draft. Most years than not, he should be the number one pick. So obviously the Redskins with a home run pick getting Chase Young at number 2, he's going to call havoc for offensive lines for the next decade. So that's a great pick by the Redskins.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's just another weapon they can add on the D-line with Ryan Kerrigan because he's really been the only one that ever had pressure there.
Mm-hmm. Muncie, Indiana, represent.
That's right. And Brian Arakpo used to be on the Redskins, but other than that, they haven't really had any big weapons in the middle of that defense. So,
I think the Redskins, they're trying to fit Ron Rivera's identity, which is a defensive-minded defense. He likes the, defensive front to be the strong part of the team. He coached Julius Peppers for years. I think he's going to try to imitate that with Chase Young.
Yeah.
The Redskins have done a lot investing in their defensive line in the last 4 years. You look at the last 4 years, they've added 4 guys on their defensive line, and Jonathan Allen, Deron Payne, Montez Sweat, and now Chase Young. They should be causing havoc for offensive lines for years to come. I think they're a dark horse, in that division. So
they have Landon Collins too, don't they?
Yeah, Landon Collins. It's all going to depend on the progression of Dwayne Haskins. I really think that they have a very strong defense. It really depends on the progression of Haskins, how he can do. And I think that division's really up for grabs. I'm not real sold on the Cowboys or the Eagles. So.
No.
Hey, how about the Eagles taking Jalen Hurts though?
I was shocked.
Carson Wentz can't stay healthy. That's what's going to happen.
Yeah. Jalen Hurts was known as that quarterback that you could take late and he might, turn into a Russell Wilson, might turn into like a quarterback like that. And honestly, the way he played last season at Oklahoma and the way his combine went, he might end up being a good quarterback in the NFL. I believe in him. I was hoping the Patriots would get him, but that's not Bill Belichick. So,
well, with a guy like that, you look at a guy like Lamar Jackson when he came into the league. The Ravens literally went from having one of the most mediocre offenses in the league with Joe Flacco to totally transitioning their offense to fit Lamar Jackson's skill set. And I think if a team does that for a guy like Jalen Hurts, he can be really successful at the NFL level.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Grant, how about your Patriots? You want to talk a little bit about them? What your thoughts are so far? I heard Bill Belichick's dog made that draft pick.
Yeah, he's been sitting in the chair for him this entire draft, but man, I don't know. Kyle Duggar's who we got. Never heard of him before this draft. Still don't have a clue who he is, but it's pretty much a consensus from everyone. It's the definition of a Bill Belichick pick.
Hey, you didn't hear of Tom Brady. That's all I'm saying.
Exactly. And we actually just picked a linebacker from Iowa while we were talking. I'm not gonna. And I was just talking about this last night. I love it when fans of teams have to talk about their draft pick and they're like, "Man, what a steal!" And like the dudes from like Lafayette College or something like that. Like that just always gets me. So I'll never sit here and say something about like, I've seen this guy play. I've never seen this guy play. But we traded up 2 third-round picks for him. So he's obviously got to be a little bit good. And he's going to be filling in Kyle Van Noy's spot because we lost him to Miami. So I don't know. I think we're having a good draft. I personally think that we're just going to hope to God we get a quarterback in next year's draft. And I think that's all we can do at this point.
Yeah. I just wanted to point out a division that I think will be quite interesting next year is the AFC West. I think really coming into this season, the 4 teams, the Chiefs, Broncos, Raiders, and Chargers. I think, the Chiefs obviously coming off being the defending champs. The Broncos added a lot.
Watch out for the Broncos.
The Broncos did very well for themselves. They've got a nice cachet over there. And I think that they're going to compete a little bit with the Chiefs. And, with the Chargers, we'll have to see how the new QB does over there. What's his name, Barrow or something like that? I have
Justin
no idea.
Herbert.
Justin Herbert.
Air Bear.
Yeah. But the Broncos right now, I think they are going to be trouble. People don't even think about this. They got Melvin Gordon in free agency, right? So they have a good running back. That's with Phillip Lindsay as your second running back. And now he's going to be filling a role that he's been wanting to probably fill his entire career, and that's basically being that passing down running back instead of being a workhorse, which really isn't him, in my opinion. And then other than that, you got Cortland Sutton, who's a Pro Bowler last year. You got Jerry Jeudy, and they just got another receiver in the second round. I can't remember off the top of my head who it was. Yeah. So that's right there. You got 3 – and then you also have Noah Fant, who was a first-round pick last year. That offense is going to be scary. And Drew Lock was coming in strong at the end of the year last year.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They might be a playoff team.
Evan, I'm glad you brought up the AFC West because, obviously you have the Chiefs, who I think are probably going to run the NFL for the next decade, with Mahomes there. But also I like how you guys are talking about the Broncos, a sneaky team who really came on at the end of the year when Drew Lock took over under center. And they're obviously making it an emphasis to surround him with weapons, which they've done so far in the draft. But, I look at the Chargers, who already had a lot of pieces in place. I know their season didn't pan out the way they wanted to last year, but you got to look. Derwin James missed almost the whole season last year. He's going to be back healthy. And for me, my biggest winners of the first round yesterday were the Chargers. You get rid of Phillip Rivers. There's a lot of speculation that they like Tyrod Taylor. They were going to stick with Tyrod Taylor, but they end up drafting Justin Herbert, who 6'6", athletic, big arm. He fits everything that offense wants to do with those weapons. And then they trade up and take who I had as the best linebacker in the draft, in Kenneth Murray. This is a guy who just popped off the screen every time I watched him.
Yes.
I thought they had the biggest first round out of anyone in this draft, getting their franchise quarterback, getting a difference maker on defense to add to Derwin James and Joey Bosa. I could see 3 teams from the AFC West making the playoffs next year.
Oh, without a doubt, for sure. And poor – this for a minute besides the draft. Poor Tyrod Taylor, man. That's like the story of his career. Yeah, finally get the starting job at, a historic program or, coming off, a quarterback and, oh, yeah, here comes a new guy. Yeah, I'll probably start now. Week 2, I'm out.
And the thing about that, though, is that he was not really a bad quarterback in Buffalo. He just didn't have anything around him.
Yeah.
Went to Cleveland. He was never going to start. Like, he started, but you had a number 1 pick behind you. You're not going to last. Now he's in L.A. where you honestly think, okay, maybe he has a chance now. And he has weapons. You have Mike Williams, Keenan Allen. You got Hunter Henry. And now, Herbert's going to probably start. But at least he's the backup. At least he's going to have that. He's going to at least be on a good team that if they need him, he's going to come in and produce good numbers. But personally, I think the biggest winners of the draft yesterday, I like the Dolphins. I think the Dolphins had a really good draft. The way I look at it, Tua dropped to, I think it was 5, and or 4. What is it, 4 or 5? 5. And a lot of people last year, and pretty much everybody who was looking at the draft, thought of Tua as the number 1 pick. Injuries pretty much hinder that, but Tua, I think, other than Joe Burrow, is the best player in the draft offensively. And if you look at it, they could get one of the best picks in the draft, 5 years down the road, and they still had the number 5 pick, and they also got Austin Jackson, who was a really good offensive lineman. You're filling Larry Tunsil's role. I like the Dolphins, and with their free agency pickups, I hate to say it, I think they're a sleeper. I like the Dolphins this year.
I especially, I think coming in, I think you got to give Fitz a good look first at your starting spot. And I think he'll be a great compliment to Tua. Because he's literally been around the league.
Yeah.
Been to different, programs, different schemes, different coaches. So he's been around the league and he knows a little bit. So I think that will rub off well on the Tua. And I'm honestly excited to see what Brian Flores does down there, as far as changing the culture around down there. I don't have any specifics on what I'm expecting to see, but I just get a general sense that he's looking for big changes down there, and I think it's going to start, especially with the addition of Tua. Yeah,
agreed.
Yeah, just to add to that, I agree. I thought the Dolphins had a huge first round yesterday. This is the guy they wanted. You don't just trade Minkah Fitzpatrick and Laramie Tunsil at the start of the season for your rebuild. You don't trade your two best young players unless you're eyeing a guy who you want as your guy, your franchise quarterback. It's been Tua all along. There was a lot of speculation leading up to the draft. They didn't have to trade up. Tua's a guy, if it wasn't for the hip injury, I think he would have highly been considered for them. So, they nailed it getting their quarterback at 5 without having to trade up. And then their second biggest need was offensive tackle. They filled that void and then added an ultra-athletic corner later on in the first round. So I thought they did a great job. And, the thing about having Fitz there, you don't have to rush Tua onto the field. He's your franchise quarterback. If he's not 100% healthy, don't rush him on. Let him learn from a pro and Ryan Fitzpatrick, and he'll see the field eventually his rookie year.
Yeah. And I'm a big Fitzmagic fan because, honestly, he won me a fantasy football league last year. And, he's just one of those guys that you can have in a locker room and, he's going to be the veteran that you're going to want. Because, like you said, Evan, he's literally been to probably 6 or 7 teams at this point in his career. And I think every single team in that division besides the Patriots. So, he has knowledge. He knows what he's going to do. So, I think that's going to be a perfect situation for Tua. But other than that, what do you guys think besides the Packers we mentioned briefly, who are the losers of the draft?
Losers. Guess looking over the board, I don't really – I just, this draft is – in history of this draft, in the loser category is going to go to the Packers. I know you said besides the Packers, but that's honestly – when I think of losers, that's really the only one, at least in the, the first round. I don't know how the other rounds are going right now or will go, but I just don't understand the thought process of trading up. When you trade up, that means you have – it's not just like, oh, yeah, we'll just keep him on the – you have a certain interest in him to instead of doing resources elsewhere, you're trying to go for him,
Yeah.
So I just don't get the thought process,
And to add to the Packers, a team who I thought could have done better in the first round was a team that had multiple first-round picks, and that's the Las Vegas Raiders. Henry Ruggs, in my opinion, was the number 3 receiver in this draft. They made him the number 1 receiver with the 12th pick. I get he's intriguing with the Tyreek Hill speed. They get to play Tyreek Hill twice a year. They see that speed kills. I get it. So I kind of understood the pick. But, Jerry Jeudy was a far more productive receiver at Alabama than Henry Ruggs. Jerry Jeudy was my number 1 receiver. CeeDee Lamb was my number 2. Ruggs was my number 3. And then they come back at 19 and take a guy who really had a 2nd to 3rd round grade, and that's Damon Arnett, the corner from Ohio State. I get he has a lot of upside, but, I was looking, at, different corners there rather than him. But I thought they filled their needs, but I thought, I personally would have went in a different direction than the 2 players that they picked.
And the thing I thought about Henry Ruggs is I was thinking the same exact thing about his speed, and I thought, who is the most recent receiver that you can think of that got drafted high because of his speed?
John
Ross. Yep. That's all you got to say. John Ross isn't a bad receiver, but was he really a receiver that should have been drafted that high? No.
Well, here's the thing. When you trade 2 players like Amari Cooper and Khalil Mack, you better hope you get these first-round picks right in your rebuild. you can't afford to miss on first-round picks, like this. And I'm not saying that they're going to miss on first-round picks necessarily. Only time will tell. But if I'm John Gruden and Mike Mayock, I'm trying to make the safest picks possible. And to me, that would have been Jerry Jeudy or CeeDee Lamb there at 12.
Especially whenever you're in a new city trying to market yourself. You want big names. And Derek Carr throwing the ball to Tyrell Williams isn't what I consider box office.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I did want to point out, I don't know if we actually covered them. I know we talked a little bit before we started. I just got to give a little plug to our Cleveland Browns for those of us that support them.
Absolutely.
Thought so far they were having a phenomenal draft. I literally remember I was doing some homework, and the Browns were up. My dad was asking me who they were going to trade, and like I didn't even know who was available on the board or anything. I'm just like, offensive line. And sure enough, because I got really tired of seeing Baker run around like a chicken with his head cut off back there in the backfield. And like the offensive line was like a wall of Swiss cheese. I was just tired of looking at it. And so I think that this guy is a great fit. Haven't had a solid, tackle since Joe Thomas, my guy. And then the Browns also they picked up Jack Conklin from Tennessee, and then I know they have a couple. J.C. Treader is their center usually, and then there's another guy I can't think of his name right now. He's a pretty solid guard, so maybe trying to find maybe a guard or two will be an added benefit. But yeah, I think Browns solid draft. I think they picked a safety tonight as well, just to boost up that backfield.
Just to add to you, Evan, I thought the Browns' biggest problems last year was the offensive line, specifically the tackle spots and head coach. And I thought they did a great job. This offseason they were aggressive. They went out and got an Ivy League guy, and Andrew Berry. He's very smart. Another Ivy League guy, head coach, and Kevin Stefanski, who had a lot of success as offensive coordinator in Minnesota. He made Kirk Cousins look really good. I'm hoping he can do the same for Baker. And then obviously, the huge additions in free agency. Austin Hooper at tight end wasn't necessarily a need, but, another weapon for Baker. Jack Conklin, a huge upgrade at right tackle. And then obviously they get their left tackle of the future with Jedrick Wills, who I thought was the best offensive tackle in this draft. Yeah. And then, in the second round, they got Grant Delpit, who last year would have been a top 10 pick in this draft. He decided to stay. I think they've had a solid draft so far, and I think they're a team that will make the playoffs next year that didn't make it this year.
Absolutely. Yeah. And one thing I want to add to our little statement that the Packers are idiots, they just drafted a running back when they have two.
I saw that. If I'm Aaron Rodgers right now, I'm extremely frustrated. Like I said, you were in the NFC Championship game last year, a couple playmakers away from beating the 49ers and making it to the Super Bowl. And so far they've drafted a guy who's going to sit on the bench and a running back in a crowded backfield with Jamal Williams and Aaron Jones. Doesn't make sense. If I'm Aaron Rodgers, I'm very frustrated right now. Still no weapons added to the team. It's kind of concerning.
It is. You guys have anything?
I think that's all I can think of the draft, for me.
Yeah. So kind of what Tyler was saying, that was something I wanted to cover. What's one team you guys think will make the playoffs this year that didn't make the playoffs last year? And I'll start off with mine real quick. I'm going to take the obvious one. I mean, this is pretty much probably everyone's pick, Tampa. I mean, they're going to. There's no world that they are not making the playoffs unless Brady gets hurt. And that will be – and even if Brady gets hurt, they still might make the playoffs. So that would be my pick, but what do you guys think?
I have a question. I'm looking on ESPN right now. The Broncos did. Never mind. So my pick is basically the Broncos. I definitely think that they're going to have a strong run, especially against the Chiefs this year, Raiders and Chargers. I think they're going to be, sort of a reborn team in that division. And so I'm really excited to see what they do, and I just really hope the Colts can put up well against them, honestly. I know the Colts will, but I do think they're going to be a very strong team coming this season. It'll make a playoff appearance.
Agreed.
Go ahead, Matt.
I really don't have anything on this end of it as far as who didn't make it, who I think will. Obviously, the Buccaneers. But a team that I think won't make it that did is the Texans. They traded away DeAndre Hopkins, which
For nothing.
for nothing. That was idiotic. And then obviously, I know we say it every year, but us Colts fans are pretty excited. I think we can make some noise in that division for sure and finally take that division outright.
Yeah. So far we have the Bucs, the Broncos, and the Colts making the playoffs as teams who didn't. I'm gonna go out on a limb here. I'm gonna say the Arizona Cardinals.
Ooh, I like that.
I know they're in a really tough division, but you got Cliff Kingsbury and Kyler Murray year 2. You know, the chemistry is going to grow from there. You know, obviously they had the headliner of free agency trading for DeAndre Hopkins, giving the Texans a bag of chips for the best receiver in the NFL. And then they took the best player on the board when they picked an Isaiah Simmons. He's a Derwin's-like player. You can plug him in anywhere on your defense. He can rush the passer. He can drop back in coverage. He's going to be a tackling machine. So, you know, I think, you know, this is a dark horse team to make the playoffs. I know they got to play the Seahawks twice a year, the Rams twice a year, and the 49ers twice a year. But, you know, I'm very intrigued by Kyler Murray and that offense and his new weapon, DeAndre Hopkins, and I think that defense, it just keeps improving.
And on the Cardinals, too, it seems like any running back they get is automatically going to be good. They made Kenyon Drake look good, and he's going to be probably their best running back this year, unless they give it to Chase Edmonds, but I would assume it'd be Kenyon Drake. But, you know, I like the Cardinals, too. So on the opposite end, we heard Matt's for who won't make the playoffs that will. Evan, what do you think?
I really haven't looked over who I don't think you know, I honestly don't think I think you give the Bengals a season. Just a little caution on my part. You know, I have no doubt Joe Burrow will potentially be a good player. You know, I obviously, like I said before, kind of want to see him in camp. I know he's good, played in college field, but there's been plenty of other players who played on the college field and has not done well in the pro field.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's necessarily Joe Burrow's case, but I just want to see him on a pro field. And, you know, even if he's a good quarterback, you know, there's also protection involved. There's play scheme. So I just want to see all that. So I just think you give the Bengals at least a season, just kind of get their feet on the ground firm and go from there. But no doubt, I think there is some improvement in their future.
Agreed. So, Tyler, who do you think is a team that won't make the playoffs next year that did this year?
You know, I'm looking on the NFC side of the bracket, and, you know, I'm looking at a team that barely squeaked into the playoffs, and that was the Philadelphia Eagles. You know, their problem last year was not giving Carson Wentz help. You know, Alshon Jeffrey constantly hurt. Deshaun Jackson only played 2 or 3 games all year. You know, they're dependent so much on Zach Ertz. And I still don't think that they've solved any of those issues. They drafted Jalen Reagor in the first round over Justin Jefferson. I didn't quite understand that. But, you know, this is a team, you know, when your franchise quarterback, you know, can't play a full season and you fail to give him weapons as well, you know, and I'm looking at that division. All 3 teams I think are on the come up. Maybe not the Cowboys, but, you know, you look at the Giants, Daniel Jones really coming on last year. Saquon was hurt a lot last year. You know, and they just drafted one of the best tackles in the draft to keep those guys upright. And then obviously I talked about the Redskins earlier. I think that they have a lot of upside defensively, depending on the progression of Dwayne Haskins. So I do not think that the Philadelphia Eagles will make the playoffs next season.
Agreed. My pick might surprise you guys, but I am going with my New England Patriots.
I saved that one for you.
I'm going to be honest. I hope they don't. I really do. I hope they don't. Me and Tyler were texting about this last night, and he made a lot of sense, and I really hope this happens. I hope we have a plan, and even if we don't have a plan, I don't see us making the playoffs. Only because Jarrett Stidham looked horrible in his only regular season appearance. Now, he might be able to improve. He's going to have, he's going to have Belichick. He's going to have McDaniels. He's going to have what Brady had. And, Belichick has a history of making quarterbacks that, granted, aren't that good, and the quarterbacks that can go get 12 wins, Matt Castle. But I really hope that the reason we didn't go after a Jordan Love or a Jalen Hurts or even a Jacob Eason this year is because we're really planning on getting Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields next year. Or I would even like getting Cam Newton this year. That would be amazing. But we're not. We're just not going to. And I don't think we'll make the playoffs. I think our division's gotten a lot better. I think the Bills are going to win it, personally. And I think the Jets are kind of on the come up. And I mentioned the Dolphins earlier. I don't think they'll make the playoffs, but I think they're going to get wins in the division. And, if we make the playoffs, I'm going to be a happy fan. But if we don't make the playoffs, I'm also going to be a happy fan because I want a good draft pick next year. I want a quarterback. So,
you don't think you think old Bill? You think old Bill's going to tank? Try to tank? You think he's the type of person that will allow that?
It's the only thing that it makes me kind of wonder. I don't know if he's going to or not, but, it's not so much tanking to me. I think it's more that he just wants to get, I don't think he has the talent to win games. I really don't. I don't think that he has the talent right now with the Patriots to win games. On defense, Stephon Gilmore, basically, you got both McCourties. Other than that, nothing too crazy.
Brand new D2 linebacker?
Yeah, Kyle Duggar, forgot about him. You never know what he's going to do. And then on offense, your only weapons on basically Sony Michel had a mediocre year. Edelman, you're going to be your best receiver. Maybe get N'Keal Harry to develop a little bit. I don't have high hopes for him. I said high hopes. That was the whole NFL draft thing this year. But, yeah, I don't know, man.
Well, I think Belichick has a plan, and I think it's more directed towards the 2021 season more than the 2020 season. I think Belichick is smart, and, he has a boatload of picks this year. He has a boatload of picks next year. And, if you look at the rosters in the NFL and these teams, most teams have their franchise quarterback. There's two generational quarterback talents coming up next year in Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence. Belichick thinks if he can get a top 10 pick and, with all the other picks that he has, it's going to be very easy to get one of those two guys, maybe trading a couple picks to move up a couple spots. But most teams have their franchise quarterback. You look at teams that might struggle next year. Let's just, say the Bengals, they're not going to take a quarterback. They have Joe Burrow. Maybe the Giants, they have Daniel Jones, et cetera. But, he has a plan, and I think it's built for the 2021 season. I don't think he's going to tank. I think he's going to build a good culture there. They're going to lose a lot of games by one score or less. Like I said, he's going to build a good culture, a good winning culture. And I wouldn't look at this as necessarily a rebuild, but more so a reboot. I think it's going to be a one-year thing. He's going to get a generational talent at quarterback, and I think that dynasty could start right over again.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I agree with that. I think they'll, during the season, like you said, I think they'll lose some close ones, but, they'll still thump the little guys that come up on their schedule. Because, Belichick, I'm on the side where, Belichick didn't, Belichick can win with or without Brady, I think. I don't think, Brady's a good quarterback, no doubt, and he can win as a player. But I think Belichick is an intelligent coach, a once-in-a-generation coach. And I think he's just intelligent enough to win games with what he's got. And like you all have said, I don't think they'll win, and be dominant like they have the past few years. But yeah, I think in the long run, I think they'll be all right.
I hope so. Honestly, the way I look at it is, I was with Evan and Matt. I was with both of you guys the night we lost to the Titans. And, you probably heard me say 2 or 3 times that night, I don't want Brady. I didn't want Brady as a Patriot. It was time for him to leave, and that was obvious. And I think he'll do better in Tampa Bay because instead of throwing to, a bunch of 4th-round scrubs no one's heard about, you're throwing to Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, Gronk again, O.J. Howard, Cameron Brate. And you have Bruce Arians, who's an offensive genius. So, the way I look at it is it's going to be good for both sides that Brady left. I don't think it's necessarily only good for one side because with Brady leaving, sure, we might have a year off, but like Tyler said, we're going to probably get a good quarterback. And if we don't get a good quarterback, we're going to have a high draft pick too. If we don't get a quarterback, we're going to get a weapon to where we can even look at free agency. I don't know off the top of my head who's a free agent next year.
There are some quarterbacks still floating around out there currently.
Yeah. And I was saying since the end of last year, I wanted Jameis Winston, and I still do. And I truly don't think anyone's going to sign Jameis. Like, I think he would have been signed by now, personally. And if the Patriots would take a chance on him, let him play for a year, I think that'd be a good idea. But, it's a Patriots thing. The Patriots don't like to go out and get the big names. That's just the way they've always been. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what they do this year. But other than that, who do we think is going to who do you think the Super Bowl contenders are this year for each conference?
Each conference.
It's kind of a tough one because the way I look at it, and I'll just start with what I think.
Are we going like 2-2, 2 from AFC, 2 from NFC?
Yeah, we can go 2-2. Yeah. From the AFC, I want to go Chiefs and Ravens, but I think I personally think the Ravens are going to be the team to go to the Super Bowl this year. The only reason for that is I think they just kind of learn from their mistakes. They know that they just got absolutely annihilated in the AFC. It wasn't even the AFC Championship. It was against the Titans. I think it was just the semis or whatever. But I don't know. I feel like Lamar's going to make a big jump. He's got a new weapon in J.K. Dobbins. The defense has always been good, and they dominated in the entire regular season. I just personally think they're going to do a lot better this year, and Lamar's going to be mature about it. Like, he's going to be more mature, and I personally think they're going to make the Super Bowl. And in the NFC, it's kind of tough. I don't like the 49ers this year to make it again. I definitely don't like the Packers. It's kind of tough, but I think I'm probably going to go with the Seahawks. And I hate to say that because of Casey. Casey, if you're watching this, hi. But, yeah, I don't see another team beating them. They had a really good year last year. I think they're only going to get better. They are probably going to lose Jadeveon Clowney, which is always going to be a huge hit to that. But at the same time, Russell Wilson's right in the middle of his prime. I think they're going to make the biggest push. They got Pete Carroll. They got Russell Wilson. They got 40,000 running backs that are good. I mean, I just think they're going to make their push this year. So that's mine, Seahawks and Ravens.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with you on the AFC side. I think these two teams are going to dominate the NFL for the next decade. You look at the Chiefs, they have the best player in the NFL right now. He's going to keep them in every year. And then, the Ravens, obviously Lamar coming off an MVP year, and they've done nothing but add talent to that team. Adding Calais Campbell, keeping Matthew Judon. They just drafted J.K. Dobbins and a very explosive linebacker in the first round yesterday, and Patrick Queen. So they're adding to that defense. They obviously had one of the most explosive offenses in the NFL. So I'm going to say the Chiefs and Ravens as well from the AFC. Then NFC, I'm going to have to agree with you on the Seahawks. I think they come out of the division. I think the 49ers got worse. I'm not sold on the Rams. I do think the Cardinals are going to make the playoffs next year, and I think they're going to be a good team. But I'm going to go Seahawks and then the Saints as well. I think, Drew Brees realizes, this is the last dance for him. He's, they've got screwed the last 2 years. I think he's going to come back fired up. They add Emmanuel Sanders. They drafted an interior lineman yesterday, one of the best interior linemen in the draft. So my Super Bowl prediction is going to be the Ravens and the Saints.
I like it.
I gotta say, I have a hard time right now narrowing it down to just 2 per conference. But I think divisional wise, I think AFC East, obviously, I think the Bills are going to take over that spot for sure. I think they had a strong playoff presence last year. I really liked what I saw from them in the performance. Obviously, AFC North is right now controlled by the Ravens. As much as I'd love to see the Cleveland Brownies up there, and we're not going to speak about in the Bengals. I think we'll make some improvements, but and we're not
Thank God it's not the Steelers.
I don't know. And then AFC South. Ideally, I want to see what the Colts can do starting the season. But for right now, I do want to say this as unbiased fan. I do think the Titans are right now poised to take over the AFC crown. AFC
Everyone
South.
Returning.
And I just think that the culture there is, since Mike Vrabel got there, is completely, done a 180, and I think they're on a road to good places. Obviously, what AFC West doesn't need to be said, the Chiefs, but I think the Broncos are going to give them a strong push. NFC East, the Cowboys for sure. I just think the other three are, really this whole division. It's kind of, it's really cluttered on who
mediocre.
Yeah, it's mediocre right now. But I do think the Cowboys are going to come in kind of a little stronger this year. I think the North, the Vikings will have that. NFC South, like you said, Drew Brees could be the last dance, New Orleans. And then the West, I guess, it's going to be tough between the 49ers and the Seahawks. But I'm going to stick with the 49ers. And then I'd have to think a little bit about who from there could potentially be the Super Bowl. For me, it's still a little early to try to figure that out, but
I like it.
Yeah, I think my picks, AFC right now, Chiefs obviously number one, but I'm gonna come up with a dark horse for the second one in the Bills. I think they were close last year. I think Josh Allen's gonna have a big year this year. He just added another weapon in Stephon Diggs. I think they've got the pieces to do something good in the playoffs. But in the NFC, I agree with you guys with the Seahawks and the Saints. But I think the Saints will take the NFC this year.
I like it. Other than the NFL, I don't think there's any much more to talk about, and I think we should move on to what I've been excited about all day. Let's go to our top 10 NBA players of all time. All right, so this is what we'll do. We're going to start with 10. Name it. You can give your reasoning or whatever. We'll start with 10. We'll just go down to 1. We'll all say 10. I'll say 9. I'll say 8. Let's see how close we are to the two together. I have a couple on here that I don't think anyone else will have. But whoever wants to start it, take it away. Number 10.
I'll go first.
Go ahead.
It was really hard making this list. I thought there was a lot of people worthy of, making it, and I had a couple close cutoffs. But to start at number 10, I'm going to go with Shaquille O'Neal. I thought this was a guy who, dominated the center position, for the first decade of the 2000s. 15-time All-Star, 4 rings, 3-time Final MVP. Very worthy of a top 10 NBA player. Number 9.
No, we're gonna go. Everyone says they're 10, and then we'll go to 9. All right, Matt, go ahead.
Okay, so at number 10, I have one that maybe not a lot of people would have even in their top 10, maybe not top 15. I'd be surprised if he's not in your top 15, but I have Dirk Nowitzki at number 10. In my opinion, best power forward of all time, one of the best post scorers of all time. He won one NBA championship, but he went to 12 finals, and he was 12 All-NBA, and he was a 14-time All-Star. But I think he holds that number 10 spot for sure.
I don't have him, but I do like that, because I agree that he's definitely one of the top power forwards of all time. I don't know. I only have, I think, one power forward on my list, and it's somebody that I think those two are neck and neck. But Evan, go ahead, number 10.
Yeah, so I think my list is pretty smart. I'm well known in the basketball community as a spot-on analyst. So here we go. I got number 10. I have the great, the awesome, the impeccable Wilt Chamberlain at number 10.
I like it.
Now, I can't go specifically into I guess reasons why I'm keeping those very close to myself. But I do like his hairstyle during his playing days, and he's a very skilled basketball player. And that's about all I can release at this time about my choice for Wilt Chamberlain at number 10.
Okay. My number 10 is the only power forward on my list. I have Tim Duncan. I think Tim Duncan, by far, one of the most successful players of all time. Obviously, with the Spurs, he got multiple championships. One was whenever he was with David Robinson. One was when he was with Parker and Ginobili. No, actually two with each. My bad. I was not prepared for Tim Duncan. But, yeah, I think, once his career was over, it was just kind of one of those guys where he never made the flashy plays, but you just know that he's one of the all-time greats. Not necessarily any higher than 10 on my list, but I do like Tim Duncan. So, number 9, Tyler.
Number 9, I'm going with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. This guy is the all-time leading scorer in NBA history. 6-time MVP, won 6 rings. I think he dominated his era for a long time. So, yeah.
All right, for my number 9, I had Hakeem Olajuwon. He won 1 MVP, but that's only because he played in the same era as Jordan.
Agreed.
Two-time NBA champ. Again, I think he would have had more, but Jordan. 12-time All-Star, 12-time All-NBA. He's the best post scorer of all time, in my opinion. So,
Evan, let's hear your number 9.
I'm spot on with Tyler, with Kareem in this category. And I was going to say a lot of the stuff that Tyler was going to say, but I have to say, just look up on YouTube, Kareem and Kent Benson, and that is my reason for him at number 9 at all. Just look it up. I don't have to say any more than that. Just look it up. I definitely do believe he should also belong on the top 10 list of boxers of all time.
Absolutely. I like it. Kent Benson, definitely. If we ever do a future episode with the NBA, if we ever do a draft bust episode or something like that, you'll probably expect to see his name on there. But my number 9 is probably a little lower. I assume you guys have him a little bit higher on your list, but I have Magic Johnson, 3-time MVP, obviously one of the best point guards of all time. I just don't see him as one of the better players of all time as far as top 5 goes. I just think there's more players that have had more of an impact on the NBA than he did. Obviously, he had 3 MVPs. He was a really good player, and he was the face of the Lakers back then. But honestly, I just think there's more players that were more transcendent to the game. So I only have him at number 9. So number 8, Mr. Tim.
Number 8, I had Wilt Chamberlain. He gets a lot, of pushback from the era he played in, but era or not, this is a guy that averaged 30 points and 23 rebounds a game. He scored 100 points in a basketball game, 4-time MVP, 2 rings. He dominated his era for a long time. So,
all right, for my number 8, I have Shaquille O'Neal. Like Tyler said, obviously one of the most dominant centers of all time, if not the most dominant. He won 4 championships with Kobe, 15-time All-Star, 14-time All-NBA, 3-time MVP, Finals MVP, and 1-time NBA MVP. So,
Mr. Hosey.
For my number 8 spot, I have the legendary and spectacular Magic Johnson. Mainly because, he's a good player, and I had to put him a little lower on the list just because his name is Magic. I had to humble him out a little bit. So, yep, that's why I had Magic Johnson at number 8. That's my reasoning.
Evan, how many hours of NBA research do you think you've done in your lifetime?
More than I will ever do on any other subject in my life.
My number 8 was Wilt Chamberlain as well. I think that Will is going to always be regarded as one of the best centers in NBA history. I'm going to be one of those guys to say his competition wasn't up to standard to the more modern NBA, so that's why he's a little lower in my list. but you can't deny his stats. You can't deny his greatness. Obviously, he had 100 points in one game, so you really can't, even though he was playing against guys that would take cigarette breaks at halftime, it's still impressive. So down to number 7.
Number 7, I had Magic Johnson. He was really the first guy we saw that was that tall figure at the point guard position. He dominated the position for the Showtime Lakers. He was a 3-time MVP, 5 rings, 3-time final MVP. And like I said, I think he elevated a lot of people, made a lot of people better, and transcended the game. So
I agree.
My number 7, I had Wilt Chamberlain. Like you guys said, you can't really deny the stats. No matter era, the stats are still impressive. So
absolutely. Mr. Hosey?
I have number 7, the competitor to my number 8, the great Larry Bird, as my number 7 spot. I think he's a solid basketball player. The film I've broken down, good shot form. I think
Shout out Will Thurlow.
After his shot form, great mustache at one point, and he rocked the short shorts back in the day. Played well, So that's my number 7.
Absolutely. My number 7 was Kareem. Obviously, all-time point scorer leader. I mean, he's going to be one of the best big men of all time. Played with the Bucks and the Lakers. I think that when you think of guys that absolutely change the way players play the game, you got to think of Kareem. But he obviously had the hook that my dad actually adopted. But he actually had – yeah, that he started. He had a hook that, was probably one of the best moves of all time, along with Dirk's fade. And I think that, he could be higher on this list. Like I said, I have some surprises down the road, but yeah, that was my number 7. So number 6.
Number 6, I'm going Bill Russell. This is a guy averaged 23 rebounds a game, and he won 11 NBA championships. That's just looking at that number, that's ridiculous. 5-time MVP, another guy who just dominated his era. And, I thought the 11 championships popped off the page for me.
Absolutely.
My number 6 was Larry Bird. In my opinion, best shooter of all time. People can argue Ray Allen, but I think Larry Bird was obviously, more consistent. But plenty of championships, and he just dominated the game back then. So
I have to say that my number 6, if it wasn't already a stacked list, I'd have him higher. But I have to say at number 6, I have the world's biggest man, Shaquille O'Neal, at number 6. Big fan of the big guy, successful businessman. Some say my playing style in basketball is similar to his. Maybe not as much scoring, but the heart is there. Number 6 fits Shaq very well on my list.
All right, here's my surprise of my list. My number 6 is Steph Curry. I think Steph Curry is probably by far the most influential person to ever play basketball, in my opinion. I think that he is the reason that most teams are really adapting to the 3-point, era of the NBA. Him and Klay Thompson, you can't discredit Klay Thompson, but Steph Curry, the first ever unanimous MVP. Other than that, he was pretty much the best player on the team that's won the most games in a regular season. They lost that finals, but they honestly should have won it. And that's coming from a LeBron fan. If it wasn't for Draymond getting suspended, and I think that they would have won that finals anyway. He's a 3-time champion. I think he's on his way to 2 more. I think next season when him and Klay and Draymond are healthy, with possibly the number 1 pick and maybe a free agent pickup, along with Pascal on the bench, I think he's going to probably get 1 or 2 more championships. I think that if you look at somebody who's completely changed the way the NBA is played, Steph Curry's at the top of the list. So I put him at number 6. So, on to number 5.
Number 5, I have the best power forward to ever play the game, and that's Tim Duncan. The dude, he's a class act. He did things the right way, played on the same team his whole career. And, you look at his accolades, and, I think his compare with just about anyone. He was a 2-time MVP, won 5 championships, 3-time final MVP, 15-time All-NBA, and I think this is just as impressive, 15-time All-Defense. He got it done on both ends of the court, and I think he's very worthy of a top 5 NBA player of all time.
Absolutely.
My number 5, I have Kareem. Obviously, most points scored ever. And like Evan said, all you need to know is Ken Benson. All you need to do is look at Ken Benson. That's all you need to know about him.
Absolutely.
I got to say it, my number 5, coming in hot, I think, is the swagger above them all, Allen Iverson.
Ooh.
And, I just got to, spectacular hair choice, first of all. Played for the 76ers. Love me some 76ers action. Low-key fan. I know everybody out there knows that probably. And swag. That's all I got to say. Swag.
Absolutely. My number 5, someone else that I don't really expect to see on this list from you guys, maybe. I have Kevin Durant number 5. The reason I have Kevin Durant at 5, I think he's the best pure scorer of all time. I think he can do it literally at any level he wants. He only won 1 MVP so far, but I don't think that should even dictate how his careers went, because you see him go to Golden State. Sure, you're with Steph Curry, who is just on my list, but they won 2 straight championships, and it wasn't even close. Like, literally, it was arguably one of the most uncontested championships of all time. Won 2 straight, would have won a third if he didn't get injured. And I think even though he's entering his 30s, him and Kyrie are about to feast in Brooklyn whenever they're both healthy. And I think going to just pure talent, one of the best players of all time. So, on to number 4.
Yeah, I just want to add, I agree with you, Grant. I think when it's all said and done, Durant and Curry will definitely both be top 10 NBA players of all time. But on to number 4, I have Larry Bird. You guys pretty much covered it. I mean, there's not much to say about him. He's great. I mean, one of the greatest shooters ever. Got it done on both ends of the court. Very successful and led that very good Celtics team to a lot of success. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
My number 4, I have rest in peace, Kobe Bryant. I think one of the best scorers of all time, if not the best. Dominated the West for many years. Him and Shaq and that Lakers team dominated. But yeah, that's really all I got to say. He dominated the game for a long time.
Yeah, for my number 4, I have Isaiah Thomas.
Which one?
I'll let you guess.
Okay.
Yeah, I know who I'm talking about. But yeah, you should do some Google searches for sure. Yeah, good player. He's a bad man, and I think he belongs number 4 on my list.
I'm hoping you're talking about the Bad Boys one, even though he's probably not in my top 10.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I love the Bad Boys.
Know that.
For my number 4, I have Bill Russell. I think that when you look at 11 times winning the NBA championship, that's just right there, arguably the craziest thing in NBA history. But one thing that I saw that I think is just something that you would never see in today's NBA, he averaged 22.5 rebounds a game. That right there is insane to me. 12-time All-Star, 5-time MVP. I think that he was just pretty much the best winner in NBA history, even more than Jordan, in my opinion. I think that he won a little bit pretty much to the point where he is always going to be known as one of the best winners in NBA history. So, on number 3.
Number 3, I have the late Kobe Bryant. Obviously, this is one of the most fierce competitors the NBA has ever seen. You know, he only has one MVP, but he got robbed of a couple MVPs in my opinion. 5 rings. He's one of those guys that got done on both ends of the court too. 15-time All NBA, 12-time All Defense. Like I said, you know, his competitive nature and mentality was just unmatched.
My number 3 is Magic Johnson. You guys had him. You guys had him lower on your list, but you guys pretty much covered it. He's one of the best facilitators of all time. And him and Kareem with that Lakers team, they dominated the NBA back then. And them going up against Bird and the Lakers was always fun to watch. So.
Yeah, for my number 3, I'm with Tyler on this one. I got the late, great Kobe Bryant, you know, with the Mamba mentality, fierce competitor. And I hate to see him gone, you know. Can't imagine what he would have done for the basketball world while still alive, but yet out of the game. Gone too soon. But I have him on number 3 on my list. Yeah.
I also had Kobe Bryant at number 3. Basically already covered. I think that when you look at the years 2000 to probably around 2015, you know, he's going to be one of the biggest names you would see in the sport. Always an all-star. Like you said, only won 1 MVP, but he probably should have won more. I think that he is going to be regarded as one of the best players even after and the next 30 years. You know, when it comes to the Lakers, you think of Kobe. That's just the way it goes. So that's my number 3. Now we're in the top 2.
All right. You know, I think this was the hardest part for me was determining who was 1 and who was 2. And I think the top 2 is going to be consensus on everyone's list here. But number 2, I have LeBron. You know, I think very well he can end up being number 1 when it's all said and done. But, you know, this year I thought the Lakers probably would have won it all. Bron also probably could have won another MVP, arguably. But, I mean, there's not much to say about this guy. You know, he gets it done on both ends of the court. Wherever he goes, he wins. You know, I've never seen anything like it for a guy, you know, his size, you know, being able to play point guard and do what he does. You know, he's changed the game. So.
Yeah, I agree. My number 2 is LeBron, but honestly, I wish I could put 2 number 1s with him and MJ. But ultimately, the decision to put MJ number 1 was the finals record. MJ was 6-0, never lost when he went, and LeBron is 3-5. So obviously LeBron has been more, but he's also lost more. So.
Yeah, number 2 is Moses Malone. I'm just kidding. LeBron. I have LeBron as no, he's the king, but he's number 2. That's all I got to say.
I got Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan's my number 2. You know, I'll get to LeBron once I get to number 1, but Michael Jordan, obviously the GOAT. He's going to be one of the best figures in sports forever. And I think that when you look at Michael Jordan, obviously his finals record pretty much tells it all. But I'll just leave it at that for number 1. So we pretty much know everyone's answer, but go ahead and give your reasoning.
Yeah, I'm Michael Jordan. You know, I had a hard time picking apart him and LeBron. And like I said, I think it's a 1A, 1B situation. And I think LeBron possibly could end up being number 1 on my list at some point. But the thing that separated Jordan was just the way that he competed. You know, you've never seen anything like it. It's almost like, you know, the guy had a switch, you know, that he could turn on. He was never tired. 11-time All-NBA, 9-time All-Defense. And this is just crazy to me. 10-time scoring champion in the league, led the league in scoring 10 times, averaged 30 points a game for his career, 6-0 in the finals, 5-time MVP. You know, to me, as of now, he's the greatest basketball player.
Yeah, I agree. Literally everything you just said was everything I was going to say. But I will also add to the point that he was more of a competitor, I think, because back then I think the NBA was more spread out as far as talent. I think there were multiple teams in each conference that could win it all, but every year his team was always on top. So,
Yeah, it's no surprise my list. Number one, got Michael Jordan. Great player. You know, I reviewed a lot of tape going into this, but I can tell you what, the biggest contributor was the Last Dance documentary going on. And I got to say, any person who can deal with Jerry Cross, that little short man up there in Chicago, I think, he deserves it, and he didn't really have Scotty there for a while. And, he's a champ. Good shoes. He's probably got some cologne out there too. He seems like a cologne guy. And he's good at golf.
Absolutely. So I got LeBron at number one. Only reason why I separate him from Michael Jordan, and like pretty much everyone said, it's very close. And by the time it's done, you never know. But the way I look at it is LeBron can play basically every position on the floor. He is probably the best athlete that the NBA has ever seen. He can jump like crazy. He can run like crazy. He can do everything you need from a basketball player. And at the same time, here in late his career, he's developed a three-point shot. He's at the point where, he has Anthony Davis, but he's still putting up crazy numbers with the Lakers. Could have won an MVP this year. He might still win MVPs, and he's, 34, 35, 36, around that age? Like, literally, it is insane what he was doing. And he took a team where the second best player was Matthew Dellavedova deep into a finals. That right there is insane to me.
That's a solid second best player, by the way.
It is. I mean, you can't deny Delly's excellence, but he got unlucky with some finals. I think the Mavericks, they lost fair and square, but I think the finals he lost with the Cavs, injuries. Like I said earlier in my argument with the Golden State Warriors, he very well couldn't have won that one with the Cleveland Cavaliers, but the way he did it right there just shows that he has the competitiveness to be my number one. So obviously it's hard, and my opinion may change here in about 4 weeks when the Last Dance documentary is over, but that is what I have. So that was a nice little list. We don't have to do something like that every week, something along those lines, but other than that, I think the only thing else I wanted to discuss, obviously the coronavirus is a little bit crazy. No sports are going on at all. What do we think about sports coming back? Do we think they're going to come back? When are they going to come back? Who's going to be the first league to do it? Stuff like that.
Good question.
I think, like professional sports and college sports are going to be totally different. They both have different revenue systems. So I would think professional sports would maybe be back first. Just my guess. Because, for college sports to go back, college school has to go back first in order for that to happen. So, I'm kind of anxious to see. I mean, it's hard telling. I don't know when all this is going to end. But I do think that there will be sports in the fall. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. I do think at some capacity, there will be. Whether you have, you might have a limited capacity stadium. I mean, the MLB already has that, but
True.
But yeah, I do think they'll return in the fall. It's just gonna have to be one of those situations we play it by ear. It's gonna be, if not a month by month, a week by week scenario. And then you never know. God forbid it comes back in the fall. So just have to keep our eyes and ears open. My hope is that it does return. Personally, I want to play this fall really bad, especially, put a lot of work in the off season, like a lot of guys have been doing across divisions and pros. So they want to get back out there and compete.
Yeah, I agree, definitely. But yeah, who knows when everything's going to come back at this point? Because we've been in quarantine for what? Almost
About
2 months.
Yeah.
Yeah. So who knows? We just got to play it by ear, like Evan said. So.
Yeah, personally, I think if any league comes back, it's the MLB. I think they have the best plan so far to come back. a lot of people's opinions is they don't care if the MLB comes back, which I get. But I'm a big baseball person. Obviously, if you know me, I'm a big Braves fan. But I think the MLB has the best plan in place to basically quarantine whoever's at the facility, use the spring training facilities in Florida and Arizona, use the Diamondbacks, Marlins, and Rays arenas or stadiums to play, and basically don't let anyone in except for the players, the team staff, and the people to run the arena. And if you don't have fans, you don't have concessions, you don't have ushers, it's going to be a limited amount of people. But other than that, it's hard telling. Indiana is pretty much hoping to be off the stay-at-home order on May 2nd, which obviously everything's not going to go back to normal, but hopefully it's going to be a little bit more back to normal. But I just want to see sports again. I think everyone else does too, but, obviously it's a little bit more important to talk about health. And, one thing that I actually saw that made a lot of sense is if you look at a lot of coaches in all the big sports, mostly baseball, but you could also see it in the NBA and the NFL. There's a lot of coaches over the age of 65 who are at a bigger risk of getting, fatal effects from the coronavirus. So it's kind of hard telling, where they'll go with that route. If they play, will the coaches step down? Will they wait? It's just kind of it's a weird position that I don't think sports has ever seen, like, ever. It's crazy. But other than that, I think that about does it, if we don't have any other final thoughts.
Yeah, I would just say to anybody listening out there, just support us, as we try to figure things out with this and get it off and running. Maybe we all plug our social media accounts, give us a little bit of a follow back, follow me at the Vintage Noble. That's vintage with a 1 on Twitter. You'll be sure to you'll be entertained. That's for sure.
Anyone else?
Yeah. If anyone's listening, thanks for listening. Hopefully we can get this thing off and running. It's just a couple guys who love sports, giving our opinions. Everyone stay safe and quarantine.
Yeah, absolutely. Like Tyler said, everyone make sure you stay safe, stay home. And yeah, I'll do a little shameless plug here. At Maddie D Beats on Twitter and Instagram. I just came out with a new beat today, actually, called Summer.
Hey, it's almost summertime, baby.
It's close. It's close.
Absolutely. Make sure you check that out. If you're still watching, hopefully if this takes off a little bit. If not, we're still going to probably do it, hopefully weekly. And once this quarantine ends, maybe we can get to a point where we're all in the same room, all have mics so we don't sound like robots, and maybe this can get a little better. So if you're watching on either iTunes, YouTube, literally anything I post this on, thank you. Have a great day.